We get asked why we chose to move to Galicia and specifically Ourense, because when most people think of moving to Spain, they don't think about going to a mid-sized inland city in Galicia.
But the truth is, we love it here. And it's because we thought long and hard about finding a place that resonated with who we are, how we want to live, what we want to do, and the life that we want to build here in Spain. So we're going to share how we chose Galicia and some of our main criteria for making that decision so you can weigh your own options and maybe even discover a city that you never expected to love. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Lainey, and this is Days We Spend.
So our first tip for finding a city that you really want to live in Spain has nothing to do with budget. It's prioritize your hobbies and your interests. There's a reason that we call our channel Days We Spend. It's because we think that the way that you spend your day really does matter for making you happy with your life. Don't start your search on Idealista. It's important to look at your budget, but browse around a city that you're interested in by searching for very specific things that matter to you. If you're someone who likes hiking, are there hiking trails in this city? Is there a river walk that you would spend time at on a regular basis? If you like to surf, are there surf spots? Be specific. I love rock climbing. So when we were considering Ourense, I jumped into the map and I Googled climbing gym and I got a result. And over the past 2 years, access to that very specific hobby has been really essential to my happiness.
So when I was looking for things to do, I was looking for hiking trails that were starting in the cities, something that was really walkable because I really love walking. But I also remember searching for specialty gyms like an aerial arts center. And I found one here and I went there for about 1.5 years and it was great. It was a really good way to introduce me to people who lived here and just get me out of our apartment to something really active. I didn't have everything I wanted here. There wasn't a very big swing dancing community, but I knew those communities existed in nearby places if I wanted to do them. And just remember, if you can't find something on Google in Spain searching in English, you need to figure out what those words are in Spanish and search for that activity or thing to do in Spanish. You think of rock climbing gym, you will need to search for rocodromo.
Rocodromo. That actually might be the fact of this entire video. You might be using the wrong word. What's a deal breaker? If you didn't have access to this, would you be happy? Moving to Spain is not going to fundamentally change how you like to spend your time. I would even recommend making a short list of a few of the must-haves. If you're a really big foodie and you move to a smallish town that doesn't have as many options, you're going to find yourself traveling a lot more than you want to. Not prioritizing what you love is a recipe for unhappiness, no matter where you end up.
So for us, more specifically about Ourense, we really love the Camino de Santiago, and our city is on one of the Camino routes. So that's something that was really special to us, is like feeling that we were still part of that pilgrim tradition and seeing pilgrims in our town.
Yeah, we walk past the Camino shells all the time. They're all over the city. The biggest draw, obviously, to Ourense for us was the thermal baths. There's a series of thermal baths along the river here, the Minho River. Most of them are free. There's one that's privately operated, but we visited here years ago, enjoyed spending a week here. We couldn't believe the access to the pools, and we thought long and hard, and we're like, yeah, I want to spend time in the pools every day. We prioritize this seemingly kind of irrelevant thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, the locals are like, why did you move to Ourense? And we're like, the termas, they're amazing. And they all go, oh, okay. So with that in mind, the amenities of the place you live are directly related to the city size. So city size matters.
City size matters.
When you choose a place in Spain.
If you dream of living in Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, that's awesome. But we decided very quickly in our search that we did not want to live in a massive city.
We used to live in New York City for over 10 years each, and we've done the big city thing. We know what that's like. We wanted something that was quieter where we could walk and we wouldn't have to take the metro. And while it's exciting for us to go and visit Madrid, we really like being in a city that's about 100,000 people because it feels like about the right size for where we are in life right now.
We didn't want to try to replicate that lifestyle here in Spain. We wanted something a little smaller, but not too small. It was our Goldilocks zone. It's big enough to have the climbing and the dancing and the food that we want, but still small enough to walk.
We also walk a lot further than the average person. Most of our friends are like, you walked that far?
Yeah, we routinely walk to the hot pools. There's a really far one and we're like, yeah, let's walk there. And they're like, we're renting a car. Those things that are important to us, they're a little bit harder to find once you get below a certain size. You know, anything under 15 or 20,000 people might be very charming, but it won't have half as much access to really specific things. You're going to end up having to take a train, a bus, or drive to get to those.
And so in Spain, typically the bigger cities are the capitals of those provinces. So for us, like in Ourense, it's the capital of the Ourense province, which means that all of our bureaucracy, paperwork, and things that we have to do are right in our city versus having to travel to go do that. So if you live somewhere smaller or you live somewhere that's not necessarily the capital of that area, you're going to have to be doing a lot of your paperwork, especially just the first few months that you live there.
Moving to a pueblo and then having to get on the bus every day to go to all your appointments might be kind of frustrating. If you move to a massive city like Madrid, you might have the opposite problem. It might be hard to get an appointment.
But also, if you wanted to live in the countryside and you envision yourself somewhere that's really quiet, there's nothing wrong with doing that either. It's just that that's going to affect your day-to-day life.
If you had to err on the side of caution, I would say a little bit bigger is probably better than a little bit smaller, especially your first year. It might be a little hard to get through some of the language barriers. Even if you're a pretty competent Spanish speaker, there's a lot of regional dialects here. Might be harder to make friends in your age group. Might be harder to connect with other parts of Spain if it takes you a long time to get to the train or bus lines aren't as strong. If you're on the fence, go a size larger.
Yeah, I really think that if you're looking for a community of expats, the bigger the city, the more people are going to be there for you to meet and learn from. It can also be a bad thing. Maybe you want to have more friends that are local instead of just immediately plugging into the expat community.
We didn't move here to only meet people who are not from here.
Yes.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the cost of living. And by that, we mean very specifically the cost of rent when you move to Spain. Your budget is obviously going to be a really important thing to think about. We thought about it. We hope that you think about it. That's why we do our big cost of living video. We live in Ourense. We pay 600 euros a month for this lovely 2-bedroom, 2-bath duplex. If we went to a larger city like Madrid, Barcelona, or even Valencia, very easily expect to pay 1,500, maybe even a little bit more for what we're getting here.
And even this apartment in other cities in Galicia that were on the coast, such as Vigo or A Coruña, would be at least double, maybe.
Not quite double.
Yeah, maybe not quite double.
800 to 1,000, very, very easily.
Rent in Spain has increased a lot in the last 2 years. So just budget for that. If you know you're moving a year from now or 2 years from now, the prices that you're seeing right now on Idealista are not going to be accurate.
Before we even applied for our visa, we came on a kind of exploratory trip to Spain to see what it was like to live here. And the city that we chose was San Sebastian. Donostia. And we really loved it there. It's one of our favorite cities. We spent 2 months there and we
ate all the things.
We did a good job. However, for us, the cost of rent, it's the most expensive city in Spain for rental per square meter. You can easily expect to pay 1,500 or more for even small-ish apartments. It's a very desirable coastal city. And for us, especially in our first year, we thought that that was unsustainable. We're really glad in hindsight during their first year or two that we weren't stressed out about the cost of our rent.
When we were applying for a visa and we said, where do we want to live? And we said, well, we love San Sebastian. But we just immediately decided not to because it was really hard to find things online in our discovery on Idealista that were long-term rentals versus short-term rentals, which is going to be a problem if you're anywhere near the beach. And anywhere in Spain, the availability of someone renting for the whole year versus just 8 or 9 months.
The rental market is really competitive there.
So when we thought of is what inland cities do we like, we remembered all the things that we liked about Ourense because the things to do. And we said, we think we would really like it, but just in case we don't, we could move in a year. And it won't have cost us an arm and a leg in rent to change places. I mean, but it's been 2 years, over 2 years, and we are still really loving our decision.
The reason we keep talking about rental prices and rental markets is because our recommendation is to not buy a home right away. I think it pays to stay in a city for a while and maybe even move around a little bit, experiencing different neighborhoods, realizing like, oh, wow, I thought Asturias was going to be perfect, but it's too wet. Or wow, it's really hot in the summer down south. You have to go there first. And I think buying might be a little bit premature because the rental, even in the expensive cities, is fairly affordable.
And most apartments are rented furnished, so you won't need to bring all your belongings with you on the first trip or so.
Many apartments are furnished. We don't have a lot of advice for like shipping stuff because we just came with our suitcases.
Another thing to consider is the weather and climate. So we're in northern Spain and we love northern Spain, but it's also really wet and cold.
They call it green Spain for a reason. Can't have green without the wet.
And if you're someone who is imagining sunny Spain, then maybe you want to go somewhere in the south or the Mediterranean coast.
There are places of Spain that see very little rain all year. We're in one of them that see rain all the time. Underestimating that can be a really big problem. Mostly because like the extremes here can be quite extreme. Parts of the coast in Galicia, incredibly wet, very stormy, like 8 months a year. And parts of the south, especially in the summer, blistering heat.
There's also lots of microclimates. For example, Ourense is in a valley, and this microclimate created by the valley means it's the hottest and the coldest city in all of Galicia. But we knew that going in, and we said we like the 4 seasons, so it's great to have cold days and hot days here, throughout the year. But yeah, it does get a little too hot in summer, and we don't have air conditioning.
I guess what we're saying is what you've heard is true. If people in the south are like always complaining about how hot it is and that's a problem for you, don't move there.
Yeah. It's about humidity too. Like it's very, very humid in northern Spain.
And these weather extremes can show up in kind of surprising ways. For instance, most people in Spain don't have a dryer. If you live somewhere where it rains all the time, that means that you might have to hang them up on like an indoor clothes rack.
We have to put dehumidifiers in our house to deal with a lot of mold and mildew that just happens if you don't constantly manage all the moisture in the air.
We have food spoil if we leave it out on the counter for too long. It's just too moist. If we had our jamon and we were living in Andalusia in the south, the butcher said it lasts for 6 months. No problem. A jamon in Galicia, you have like 5 minutes.
Well, we had about 6 weeks, and even in that time, I had to keep wiping mold off of the outside, which we didn't show in video because it's kind of gross.
Kind of gnarly.
And apparently it's fine if that happens. You wipe it off with olive oil. It never comes back. It's really interesting. Another thing we really considered, especially for us, was the transit and connectivity of the city we chose. We love to take the train, and Ourense is on a high-speed rail line. And that opened about a year before we moved here. Yeah. And I remember reading about it and saying, hey, Shawn, here's another pro in the let's check out Ourense and consider moving there, because now the speed train, it's only 2 hours and 15 minutes to get to Madrid. And that's a huge deal. It's also a 40-minute train ride to Santiago de Compostela. I knew that we were going to be exploring all parts of Spain in our first year or 2 years, because that's who we are. I mean, we're making these videos for you to explore Spain, but also we like to. We were also going to be walking the Camino de Santiago a lot. So for us to go, we finished the Camino, yay, and then go home was a huge
We
positive.
get home in like half an hour. A lot of people, when they move to Spain, are expecting to travel. If you're going to do that, you can fly. That'd be in your priorities list if you wanted to live in a city with an airport. And there are some good regional airports. There's some in Galicia and smaller cities. Yeah. But I think the best way to do that is the train. It's affordable, it's fast, it's very easy. An important note with the high-speed rail in particular is that all roads lead to Madrid. There's not a lot of connective tissue from Galicia to southern Spain. You kind of have to ping pong into Madrid and then come down. There are local regional lines, everywhere's different. And cercanías, which are like smaller mid-city rails.
Ave or Feve. There's all sorts of small regional lines.
We should do a whole video on this. I'm realizing as I'm saying this.
Or consider, are you okay taking the bus? There's lots of local buses that you can purchase, like Monbus, Alsa Bus. There's other regional lines.
It's not as romantic.
No, it's not as romantic, but it's cheaper, that's for sure. Or do you plan to have a car and you want to drive, which means, do you need a parking space where you are? Yeah. Or do you live in the country because you're going to drive into the city?
We haven't talked about cars very much because we don't have a car and we don't have plans for one anytime soon, maybe down the road, but getting a car comes with a lot more logistical problems. For instance, if you're from the US, you can't just transfer your driver's license here. You have to start all over. You have to go to driver's school. You have to take a number of lessons. You have to take a bunch of tests. You have to take a psychological test. You can't just transfer your license over, which can be frustrating for people, especially if your Spanish isn't super strong. Because the practical test with the driving instructor is only conducted in Spanish.
At least in smaller towns like Ourense and all of Galicia, they only offer it in Spanish. I think you can maybe pay extra if you live somewhere with a bigger expat population like Madrid and Barcelona and Valencia. We've seen videos where other people mentioned they were able to do that in English. And remember, the speed train is not as cheap as you would think it is, especially if you're going to somewhere like Galicia or Asturias. there's not as many options for providers of the high-speed train service. So the prices are less competitive than the rail line that goes between Madrid and Barcelona or Madrid and Valencia, where there's a lot more providers offering low-cost services.
Hop on Renfe, go on train line. You can even use Rome to Rio and just kind of play around with city routes that you are interested in. You'll very quickly find like, whoa, that's a lot longer than I thought it took to get somewhere. Or wow, that's really expensive. And that's really important to know because we hope that you come to Spain and you explore all of Spain because there's a lot of great places to see here. Another important concern is healthcare and access to education. Are you going to live close enough to a hospital or to a regular primary care provider if you're someone who needs regular care or you're a little bit older? And if you have children, do you live in a city that has the kind of school that you prefer?
So Ourense has a hospital, it has clinics, but I don't know how many specialists it has for very certain things.
I went to like a cardiologist here in Ourense, and it was one of the best medical experiences I've had in my entire life. We love our primary care provider. We use the insurance company Adeslas. We go on their online portal and we can like search for specialties. This is something I would recommend you do once you work with an insurance broker to get the kind of insurance you want. Your insurance is going to be very regional here in Spain. For instance, if we moved to Barcelona, we would have to change insurance companies because Adeslas doesn't work in Catalonia.
On the pros, the smaller the city, it's much faster for us on private health insurance to just get an appointment. We've heard that if you're in the bigger place, there's a little more competition for some of those appointments.
That's interesting.
But the bigger city, if you're someone who doesn't speak really great Spanish, you're more likely to find an English-speaking doctor. Whereas here I've found one. It's a great challenge for our Spanish, but sometimes it's so technical and you're like, I really just need to know what they're saying.
Your health is really important. So it's essential that you understand what your doctor is saying.
Yeah. And if you're someone who has kids, you might want to consider what type of school you want them in. Do you want your kids to go to a Spanish school or an international style school? Bigger cities are the ones that are going to have the offerings of different type of schooling options.
Fun fact, if you're coming from the US, you have to enroll your children in a school in Spain. Homeschooling is not an option here, as far as we understand. Lastly, something that we want to really focus on that I think gets a little bit forgotten is Spain is incredibly regional. We always knew that was the case, especially having walked the Camino and going through different comunidades and provinces. But oh my goodness, where you live is going to determine everything. From the language that's spoken, the food you eat, to the weather, but just the history. Spain is thousands of years old, and these autonomous regional communities are very distinct. Having lived in Galicia, one of the more prominent independent communities, there's a rich, unique, independent spirit here. They speak their own language in addition to Castellano, in addition to Spanish. They speak Gallego, which is a completely separate language. It's not a dialect. So we hear a completely different language on the street a lot of the times, and we see things spelled differently. Our Spanish is kind of weird because of where we live. And that is also true, obviously, for somewhere like Barcelona, where they speak Catalan, and for San Sebastian, where they speak Basque.
And if you have kids in school, those kids will be in school with those languages in addition to Castellanos.
In recent years, there's been a strong push for recognition of regional identity. Not necessarily independence. This isn't about politics. There was a lot of drama in Catalonia. The Basque country has a long history of independence. Moving to a part of Spain that is particularly independent or regionally minded is really, really important.
Almost all of them, actually. They're very, very independent minded. Even though we're united under Spain, you only hear about Basque country, Catalonia, because that's what the news is showing in the United States.
One other quick thing to think about when you're considering which region or province to move to is some of the tax laws. We're not experts on this, but the wealth tax in particular will be a little bit different depending on where you are. Madrid famously doesn't have a wealth tax. There's a few other regions where they either have a reduced burden or no wealth tax at all. Do your research. The region that you live in is going to change the way you learn Spanish. It's going to change the way you think about Spain. It's going to be something that you're going to probably grow to love.
Yeah, but it's also going to change the type of holidays that you celebrate.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't speak for all of Spain, but from what we've seen and heard, every place, no matter how small or big, has its own unique regional cultural events and parties and fiestas that go back all the way to like Middle Ages, if not even further back. For instance, in Galicia, we have Magosto and we have Samain.
And even things that are celebrated countrywide, like Carnival or Entroido, if you speak Gallego, they're going to be totally different. If you want to go somewhere where they build the big human castle, go to Catalonia. If you like drinking coffee liqueur in the woods and eating a bucket of meat, come to Galicia. It's so much fun to embrace the local culture and the local culture.
And you might ask, like, how did we discover that? For those viewers who don't watch a lot of our other videos, which is cool, welcome to our
Hello.
channel. We walk the Camino de Santiago a lot. And it's not just one route through northern Spain. There's many routes, but they all end in Galicia, in Santiago de Compostela. So over the years of us walking these routes, we've spent a lot of time in Galicia, even prior to moving here. And we knew that we felt some connection to the feeling of Galicia. It's got bagpipes, the gaita. It has mossy green walls and
Stone
old
buildings.
trees. And there's something mystical, magical. There's this history of the Meijas, like all the witches. And it's so different than other places. And that's something that we already knew we connected with. Whereas when we lived in San Sebastian for 2 months, we really connected over the culture of the cider houses. And we ran into a festival celebrating the Basque language.
Corico, yeah.
Yeah. Everywhere is so different, and you just have to see what's going to resonate with you.
I would probably be just as happy in San Sebastian. It would just be a different lifestyle. Probably prefer to be closer to the coast. I love to surf, but the cost of living was prohibitive, so there'd be a little bit of extra stress there. There's no right answer. There's so many great options. We love Logroño, Bilbao, San Sebastian,
Leon,
Burgos, Salamanca.
Oh, Salamanca.
I thought Pamplona was really interesting.
We
Lugo, Pontevedra, A Coruña, like Oviedo was really interesting.
Oviedo is so pretty.
San Vicente del Barquera. Spain's the best, you guys.
Oh, Segovia is so pretty.
Segovia. So,
and there's places we haven't been that we really want to go and visit, like Zaragoza and Valladolid. And I mean, we're naming all these places that are basically north of Madrid because that's what we know the most.
I'm so sorry if you are someone who's like, talk about Murcia. I don't even know any other cities down there. Granada? Sevilla. Don't underestimate what you like to do, and don't underestimate the feeling, the vibe. If you come into a city and you feel your heartstrings getting pulled, listen to that. That's really important.
Our biggest takeaway here is if you can, spend some time in the places that you think you want to move, which is for us, we spent a week in Ourense, and it was during summer. I can't believe we did it during the hottest part of summer. And this was in 2019. It was years before we moved to Spain. And it was like a little needle in our hearts, like reminding us, like, you really liked that place. Like it stayed there. But there's a lot of other places that have stayed there too in Spain that we visited.
Yeah.
So really our choice had kind of come down to, did we want to live in San Sebastian and pay a lot more rent for a really great lifestyle?
Wonderful lifestyle.
Or did we want to choose somewhere different?
That's not to say we don't recommend that you go there. It's wonderful. We made a video all about the best things to do in San Sebastian. Our experience in Spain has largely been very welcoming. Everyone's been incredibly kind. People are always excited to talk to us when they find out we're from somewhere else. Like, why did you move here? Like, oh my gosh.
We hope this list helped you think about, dream about where you want to live in Spain and your future life. So if you have anything that you think about that we didn't mention, please put that in the comments. We're really curious to hear about others' experience and what they consider when you move to Spain.
And if you have any specific cities, no matter where they are in Spain, let us know in the comments. We'll try to get to every city in Spain. We're going to do them all.
So make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the like button. And you can also follow us on Instagram for some more daily updates.
Thank you so much for spending your day with us.
And we'll see you next time, or in Spain.
Good luck. Buena suerte.
Our favorite place here, where we live in Ourense, Aspergas. You can drink this mineral water, so we're going to fill up some bottles, let them cool, so we have some mineral water to take for our walk tomorrow. It's so hot and lovely.